Well, let me get my microphone on. I'm finishing up a Whopper, so it's kind of stuck in my teeth. But don't forget, you have an opportunity, at least here in Texas. Early voting opened up on Monday, so we went out Tuesday and did our thing, and very glad that we did. We've got storms approaching tonight. There's Dallas has already been hit up pretty hard. I was on a live with the roaming prepper. He's in Midland, and then Texas Red Leg is up just north of Dallas, and so he was having a lot of interference because of storms. I was just out back with the dogs, and it's getting stormy appearing in the sky, what you can see, and so we're usually about 2 hours behind Dallas when they get their storms. So we just might have a little bit of storm interference, but we'll see what we can do to make things happen. So we have Scott, we have LG, fantastic. GGG Farms. So GGG Farms is just up the road about an hour, so about a third of the way from here to Dallas, and they will probably get it a little bit before I do. So if you get the storm before we do, let us know. Let us know what the conditions are like there above you. Oh, yeah. Well, I have to be careful with these new fake teeth. The new ones haven't come in yet. So I've got, the 8 implants, and then they put these dentures on top of those 8 implants. And so what they did was they gave me, what did I do with it? I guess I took it somewhere else, put it somewhere else. They gave me a plastic knife and fork and said, I'm not allowed to eat anything because it'll break the dentures, anything that I can't cut with a plastic knife and fork. So I'm looking forward to when the real ones come in. I'll be so happy. Well, GGG Farms, we had a tornado just north of here. As a matter of fact, not far from where my sister lives in Gerald. And remember, that's where the F5 hit back in '97. That was a north-south tornado. The one that hit Monday was a west to east tornado. And so I checked on my sister. She was fine. And of course, of all things, she lives in a manufactured home in Tornado Alley. So, that's one of those things that we always wonder about. Hi, Prepping by Faith, one of my absolute favorites. Gosh, all my favorites are here. LG, GGG Farms. Sean, welcome. And GGG Farms, we had 1.5 inches of rain in 1 hour, so Monday night. So that was pretty good. One of the sayings we have here in Texas is you end a drought with a flood, and you end a flood with a drought. Awesome sauce, 753. Have not seen you before. Welcome. Very happy to have you over here tonight. Steve, happy that you made it here as well. Here's our author. He has joined us this evening. And so we're going to have a lot of good discussions, and Steve can give us some actual intentions. Steve, by the way, I sent you an email on some things that I'll give you some ideas later on. And if you have to leave early, let me know, and I'll give you those ideas before you leave. The email got kicked back, but I'll try it again. So Prepping by Faith, yeah, fantastic. And she's one of my moderators. Just love her. So let me tell you, we've had a discussion, some of us creators, and we've had a discussion here in the recent past. So I just want to let you know, it's okay to disagree. I don't mind if you disagree at all, but if you come across with hateful statements, something like it's all the fault of X, and you can put in your X, or you start blaming people or hating people or anything like that, I'm sorry, we just don't want it. And my moderators have full authority to remove the comment. And if you get too rambunctious about it, then they can remove you as well. I just want to keep this as a very positive, uplifting, respectful channel. And I've had fantastic people, and I told people a long time ago. I was on one quite frequent guest on one channel in their lives. But there was just so much hate in the comments that I don't go back there anymore. This is not the place. This is not the time and place for us to be divisive. We need to be more constructive, more respectful, more appreciative, and get together and do things, what we can together. So Let me see. Oh, Texas Redleg is here. He was on that live with me. He was having some problems with the internet, uh, probably because of the storm. So welcome, Texas Redleg. And Scott and Prepping by Faith and Awesome Sauce. Okay, so let's get into this fantastic book. So we are now at the end of the series that Steve has written so far. And he says he's working on volume 6. So hopefully we'll have that very, very soon. I'll tell you the book we're going to do for the month of November. And what I'm going to do is we're going to actually delay the November meeting until the 1st of December, which is the first Thursday in December. That'll give you a little bit of time to get that book, to read it. I don't want to interfere with your Thanksgiving holiday, and that would be the last Thursday in November. So we'll talk about all of that at the end. Let me tell you something. This book is full, volume 5, the Stonemont series, The Blessing of Freedoms. This book is so chock full of political, ideological, moral discussions, and the basis on which our country was founded and how we're going to rebuild it after this cataclysmic event that has taken them back down to nothingness. And so, it's just really something about, I put myself in the position of Jim Wyatt and of Bill Gardner, and as they're trying to form these things and write these laws, and how they're describing rebuilding a republic, and a true republic this time, kind of like what we had during the colonial days, if you will, and probably even up through Jefferson. I'm going to say probably up until Madison versus, what was the one where the Supreme Court decisions? Anyhow, there was a Supreme Court decision where the Supreme Court gave the Supreme Court more power. So up until that point, definitely up until the 17th Amendment. I think the 17th Amendment was one of the worst things that's happened to our Constitution. But anyhow, I envision, I can see Adams and Franklin and Washington and Johnson and Jefferson, just all together talking about the same things that Jim Wyatt and Bill Gardner are discussing in this book. And believe it or not, and Jim Wyatt's wife, Kelly, has some fantastic input as well. And just, it's really fantastic what we're going through in this book as far as reestablishing the society. And so I think that the construct that we're working on here is we're working on building back society from the bottom up. And if you look at how the colonies were formed, if you look at the expansion, at least through the Appalachian Trail, and then a little bit of that westward expansion, probably even up until the time we got to the Mississippi River, a lot of that expansion was based on building small territorial community environs. And that's basically where we were. If you look back at the town halls of New England, I envision that as being kind of what we're setting up here in eastern Kansas through Stonemont, and it's really something neat that's taking place here. One of the things that in book 4 that Jim Wyatt and Bill Gardner talk about quite a bit, and he talks about this with Christian as well, is to read this book. And so I'm reading this book at Stephen's recommendation. I'm going to call his alter ego. I firmly believe that Jim Wyatt is Stephen Smith's alter ego, and Kelly in the book is Steve Smith's wife's Kelly alter ego. But that's just my personal opinion. So that's how I kind of envision things. So one of the things that's happening here is there's incursions coming in. So we've got these gangs coming in from the Southwest, and we've got Naomi's family down in Lubbock, Amarillo area as Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS troopers taking care of that. We've got a little bit of some stability, kind of semi-stability, let's call it, going to the east, because we see that Mike's parents come for his wedding, and we have that trail that goes through, the scouts go from Kansas through Missouri, Tennessee, and then into South Carolina and back. And so we're seeing a little bit more stability there. What we're seeing some instability is up to the north, and then of course we have the Army of the Republic of Kansas is causing that instability there in Kansas itself. And politicians are doing what politicians are trying to do, and that's assume more power for themselves. And so now we have these threats, external threats, coming in on Stonemont and the privacy, let's say, of Stonemont. And we took care of that kind of with the threats that we had in Fort Riley. We saw a little bit of the threats, and then at the end, the Army of the Republic, the Army of New Kansas, ANK, was kind of wiped out at the end of book 4. And what was his name? Coates kind of abandoned his troops on the field and went back. Of course, they were being decimated, but he went back and then took over total control and everything else in the government. So, we see this, and that's something that's a question we have to ask about Coates here that's going to be coming up. I've got in here a little bit later. So with all these threats, one of the things you have to do, and the scouts are coming up, and so one of the things we have to do is we have to do a little bit of intelligence gathering. And we have an area that's indefensible right now, because remember, as you expand your defensive perimeter, with the same number of people, then those people have less area that they can actually defend. So you're going to have gaps in your defense if you expand out. So if you've got somebody who's being threatened and needs to relocate, why not have them assume the responsibility for that area? And before that happens, however, Jim wants to make sure that the intentions are good, that these people are going to be good and everything else. So he needs to kind of infiltrate them a little bit, and he comes up with a plan on how he's going to do that. And so does anybody remember the plan that he comes up with and I think it's a brilliant plan. Hi, Lori, welcome. And so what they're going to do is they're going to insert a spy, and that spy, or a couple spies, are going to be put in, because what they notice happens is that there's this one guy who we thought he was going to be a bully and everything else a couple of books ago, and he's turning out taking very good care of the people in his charge. But he does want only people of one particular race. And so anybody else, he's turning over to the group that needs to move, into that area. So if they can have somebody inserted into the one area, and then he turns those over to the other area, then that person will be accepted as a refugee. But you have to look the part of a refugee. And this is something we have to consider ourselves, especially during the first couple months. Let's say if you live in an urban or suburban environment, you don't want to be the fat man in the neighborhood of the emaciated. So they want somebody to go through kind of a reduced diet, so they look a little bit more thin, less well fed, so it's believable that they are a refugee. And so they're going to go in, insert that person will be turned over to the area that they want to investigate. Then after investigating it for a while, that person will return and give a report. And so I think that's a brilliant plan, very good insertion of human intelligence, what we call HUMINT, or a spy. One of the things we have to realize about Malcolm Coates and how this all goes about, different things are happening at the same time, is really great and intricate. But Malcolm Coates, who deserted his troops on the battlefield at that trap that they set for him when they were heading west towards Fort Riley to get some food and other things. But he abandoned his troops, and now we see that this guy leads through intimidation. So he just basically walks up and says, "This is what I'm going to do." I see him as being a towering person of great strength, and probably not that loud. I'm thinking he's probably a very quiet guy, but his eyes say everything. And so he just tells people, "Look, I think one of his captains is kind of disrespectful to him. He just plow in between the eyes, and So one of the things that he does is he rules through fear and intimidation, and we're going to find out later on in the book how that turns out for him. Um, so it's kind of something else. Um, this is one that's got me a little bit perplexed. Is Reagan sneaks off and she's trying to starve herself, and she's doing everything that we talked about earlier in that human intelligence, where she is now. Remember, she escaped before. She's the one that came back and told the plans about the army of the New Kansas is going to go west. They set up the trap. They wipe out the army of the New Kansas, and then she's the one who kind of broke that. And she's been put in a couple positions now where she is a very solid woman. She has I believe she probably has courage and stamina far exceeding most men. And so now she's kind of going out and emaciating herself and trying to take on that role that Jim was talking about earlier that he wanted to insert. So what's not clear to me yet is whether Reagan is doing this where she's reading the tea leaves and doing it on her own. Now remember, Kyle goes with her and he's trying to talk her out of it. And so is Reagan actually an agent of Stonemont, or is she doing this on her own? Because she has done some things on her own in the past. And so that's kind of interesting. So will in book 6 there be somebody else who is sent from Stonemont, and there's an opportunity there where Stonemont and Reagan get into something, maybe a compromising situation? That's going to be very interesting how that works out. I think the suspense there is pretty good. Let me get down here. Come on, give me that arrow so I can go down. There we go. Okay, so the team that's going out to make friends and everything else, it's really something. I read this chapter the weekend after we had our vacation in Branson, and things just didn't work out. But while I was in Branson, um, Stephen was just 11 miles away in another place, and so he recommended I go there, and I went there Monday, and it was closed on Mondays because we're out of season. But we're in that area, and so his definition of Ozarkia and then the Big Cedar, and the reason we were there, if you go to Bass Pro Shop or to what's the other one that's part of Bass Pro Shop? But anyhow, if you go to Bass Pro Shop, uh, they'll try to sell you this vacation package for $125. Well, Helen had that real bad car wreck, and then she had her broken hip, and so I was trying to cheer her up, and I said, "We haven't been on a vacation now in 20 years. I'm going to buy that vacation. We're going to do it." Well, you have to listen to a 2-hour timeshare presentation. We're going to give you $100 worth of gift cards, Bass Pro Shop gift cards, and the gift card you can use for food and everything while you're there. We'll give you 4 days and 3 nights in a luxury hotel or in one of our cabins, and all you have to do is attend a 2-hour presentation. I said, that sounds like a winner. Well, we actually attended 2 different presentations for timeshares while we were there. Stephen's definition of Big Cedar is to the T. That is the reception center where we went to get the presentation of the timeshare and everything else. The cabins are just unbelievable. So seeing those lit up with Christmas tree lights and everything else, I can just imagine that. So it was kind of nice that having been to Branson just before reading that everything just fit together so well. I will tell you a secret, however. I would much rather drive on a German road in the Alps on a snowy, icy winter day than any time on the no shoulder, no guardrail, steep drop off Ozark roads that I drove through for 4 days. It's just unbelievable. I mean, one night I almost drove off a cliff. That was the night we came back from the only show that we got a chance to see. But so his discussion or his portrait of Ozarkia, Big Cedar, and Branson is to the T, just perfect, spot on. So one of the things that I really got into, and let me get my book so I can read this to you. was they're talking about a just war, or what is a just war. And Stephen on integrated preparedness today put out his kind of a sideline to this, his opinion about just wars and unjust wars, and had a pretty good video about that. Probably the last just war we were in was World War II. Of course, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. They also attacked the Aleutian Islands. They also attacked Philippines, which at that time was a protectorate of the United States. We had actually acquired 3 places as a result of the Spanish-American War at the turn of the century. We acquired the Philippines, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. And then after World War II, we gave the Philippines back its independence, and Cuba got its independence just shortly thereafter. Puerto Rico is still a protectorate of ours, or what's that called? Being 70 years old, mind goes every once in a while. But anyhow, we declared war on Japan, but we did not declare war on Germany. Germany declared war on us. So, that was kind of how that all transpired. But that was probably the last time that we really had what might be considered a just war. Let me see here what the comments are. That's the absolute truth. Commonwealth, thank you, or protectorate. Yeah. Oh yes. And he says he's working on the audio versions as well. Okay, so let's go back to the banners here, and so he's talking about bellum justum. So let me get my eyes here. One of the bad things about turning old is you need bifocals or reading glasses. I have fake eyes, and so those lenses only have one distance, and so to read, I have to wear these. I want to read a little bit to you here. It says, bellum justum, says Tom. First, it must be waged only as a last resort, after all peaceful means have failed. Second, it must be for a just cause. It has to correct a grave, immediate, and ongoing evil. And third, it must come from a valid authority arising from a consistent policy or principle. Fourth, it must have a chance of probable success. And that's the one we violated so many times, it's pitiful. So you can't send people into war when it would mean certain death. Fifth is proportionality. Force must be proportionate to the situation and not more than necessary. As a matter of fact, that proportionality, when we announced it nuclear-wise, is what caused France to withdraw from NATO, because they felt that we would only use nukes if the U.S. was nuked, which is what our policy was, and we would not defend Western Europe with nukes. We were going to be proportional to what will happen to the U.S., not to Western Europe. And then later, I think it was in the 90s, France rejoined NATO. We're at that same point now. Evidently today, the Department of Defense announced that they have done away with their retaliation agreement or policy of using nukes, and they will use nukes even when nukes have not been used against us. So let me see what we got here as comments. Okay. So let me finish up here. Force must be proportionate to the situation and not more than necessary. And finally, you must have an exit strategy. We have not had an exit strategy since World War II. We didn't have one in Korea. We didn't have one in Vietnam. We didn't have one in the Middle East. And your exit strategy cannot be empire building or putting in a proxy government and having them come to your side of you. And so, when you take a look at these requirements for a bellum justum, it's kind of an indictment against what we've been doing since let's call it 1945. And it's just unbelievable. I think it's a fantastic thing. Get that, ponder it deeply, and ask yourself, what we're getting into right now, what is that? And does it meet the criteria of a bellum justum, a just war? Are these 5 conditions being met? How will we know we're successful in Ukraine? And other things. So I would encourage you to sit down, just think about that, pray on it, see if you can come up with some ideas. Maybe it will give you an idea of where you need to stand. And so let me get down here. One of the things I found very interesting, and this is quite a concept, was on page 120, they're talking about citizenship and they're talking about voting in the new republic. And later on, it's going out now. We'll get to it here in a little bit, but later on, it comes into the 4 types of citizens or 4 types of people in the community. Let's call it that rather than citizenship. But here on page 120, there's one sentence down near the bottom of the page, and Jim shakes his head and says, "No, voting rights should be determined according to contribution." Well, the first thought that came to my mind was Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. Remember, you had to join the military and fight the insects in order to become a citizen. So service means citizenship. And that's kind of going on underlying here, and we'll get to it here in a little bit. But there's also the thought that if you aren't providing something to the community, what does the community have to offer you? This has got to be an exchange between the community and you as an individual, that you get something from the community only if you give something to the community. It's my concept. I wrote a letter to my neighbors here after Snowmageddon, and I said, I'm going to set up a 5-gallon pot. If stuff happens, and I'll put in a starter with it, as far as water, and we'll start a soup. And people call it, in the Army, we called it a nail soup, and other people call it stone soup, and there's various things of it. But, people will bring something and add to the soup. And if you add something, if you put something in, then you can take some out. And so it'll be constantly changing, and there'll be constant changes in contents. But people get out what they put in. And that's that same concept of, of building a community. You can't have some of the people just sitting around muddling and causing problems, which we have with the 2 college professors. And I forget their name. I think it's Elaine. But, they're kind of getting that little bit of the community owes us because of what we know, not because of what we're giving to the community, but because of what we know and who we are. And they're creating this little society of malcontents. And that kind of reminds me of 1984. I'm sorry, not 1984, of Animal Farm. When what was the pig's name that started the whole thing, and then he died 3 days after he gave the speech. But anyhow, that's reminiscent of Animal Farm. What the professors are doing with the people is they're trying to rouse sentiment against the community so that they can be elevated in the community. So it's kind of for personal gain. Let me get here. Yes. Yeah, and there was one. I kind of took it personal. I probably should not have. But when the USS America finished its sorties in 1990, no, it was 2000 something, when the second Gulf War, when we went to Iraq. Everybody made a big deal out of it, that mission accomplished on the conning tower, the island of the aircraft carrier, and President Bush landed in a airplane, and he had a flight suit on, and so everybody really gave him a hard time about that. Well, number one, when you're flying in a military aircraft, you have to wear a flight suit. That's a regulation. He didn't have any choice. He had to do that. Number two, that vessel had a mission. Okay, and so you take a look at any kind of a conflict. Here's the overall mission. Okay. And then you give it to the Navy, the Army, and the Marines, and the Air Force. You say, here are your missions. Each one of them subdivides missions down to other entities, so that when you get down to a single ship has its own missions that it must accomplish. Did that ship accomplish its mission? Yes. But yet there was such a big controversy because they thought President Bush was trying to look military and proclaiming that the war was over. It was a success when it wasn't. People. I go back to 1968 and one of my favorite songs, "The Boxer" by Simon and Garfunkel. And Paul Simon says something at the end of the first stanza. It's 2 lines that I think are very appropriate. And it says, "Man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest." And so, that's the case of this is the mission was accomplished. And so people made of it what they wanted to make of it, not necessarily what it really was. So we have this thing of voting rights, and the voting rights being commensurate to your contribution to the overall community. So what is your role in it? I love the way that this kind of plays out as we get into another determination of this here in just a bit. Napoleon and Snowball. No, it wasn't Napoleon. Was Napoleon the one? No, Napoleon and Snowball were the 2 piglets after, what was his name? The old 12-year-old pig that gives the speech and says all animals are equal, and then he dies 3 days later. That's when I can't remember his name. But Napoleon and Snowball, yeah, those are the other 2 piglets, the ones that take over after his death. One of the things I found very interesting, and I don't know if you all watch it, but there is a YouTube channel, and it's called Viking Preparedness, Viking Preparedness. He has pretty much gone over to Rumble. He doesn't do that much anymore on YouTube, but when he does, catch it and get it. Joe Fox is a retired Army Special Forces major, and he has developed a community right outside of Smithville, if I'm not mistaken, in Arkansas. And so he has a mountaintop, and he's created a Messianic Christian, Messianic Jew community on the top of this mountain. And he's introduced in Stephen's book here. So they're actually looking for him because they hear of this community, self-sustaining community, and they want to meet him and everything else. And so, the introduction of Pastor Joe Fox in the book is really interesting. And I was really close to where he was. I wish I knew where he was, so I could have gone down and met him. But, just things are what they are. So now then, let's talk about this levels of commitment. This is that kind of citizenship or voting rights or whatever. And so Jim proposes, and Jim and Kelly propose kind of 4 levels of citizenship. And the top level is family. And so those are the people, the founders. And so inside that family, of course, you have Jim and Kelly and their children. You have Christian and Naomi and their children. Mike was another one of the original founders of the community, and his new wife, who happens to be the daughter of Bill Garner and his wife. So this is kind of that nucleus, the people who are founding the community, and they have a little bit more say than the others. And then you have the friends, and the way he describes friends are those who have put something into the community. They're building the community. They're taking an active part in it. They're sacrificing. They're constructing. They're giving. They're dedicated to helping the community grow and expand and provide services that people need. And Pastor Joe Fox. And but anyhow, then they have the guests. And so the guests are the people who are there. They're doing what they need to, but not doing too much more than that. So, they're kind of, they'll do what they're told to do, but don't ask them to do too much more. And then you have the outsiders. And I envision the outsiders as being those 2 college professors and their riffraff. Now, the interesting thing here, I don't know, is that what I have next here? As far as comments, let me get down. Come on. There we go. So let me put you how I define what is defined in the book. So I see it as family, and family are the people who kind of invested and built it. When you build a company, you've got the dreamer, the person who wants to build the company, and they're putting it together. They're determining everything. They're giving it everything 25 hours a day. Then there's a story of the egg and the bacon for breakfast. And so, the story of the chicken and the pig. And the chicken says, well, I contribute to the breakfast. I should have something to say. And the pig says, no, I'm committed to breakfast because I have to die in order to give you bacon. And so, that's kind of how I see the next two tiers is you've got the committed, the hams, the pigs who are committed. They have to sacrifice. They're doing the things. They're building the community. They're building stores. They're creating skills and vocations that are needed for everybody else to survive. Then you kind of have the contributors. Those are the hens, who are laying the eggs. It's no skin off their back, but they're going to take their what they're using in order to build the community. And then you have the complainers, which are basically the people who are never going to be satisfied with anything. And so, the discussion here is everybody has to be participatory in the mutual defense. And so you can do it one of two ways. And you can either do it by participating in the defense forces, or you can pay a tax to pay for the people who are participating in the defense forces. And I think that's a great solution. And they say it's going to be a 20% tax. So that kind of, those last two groups, the contributors and the complainers, you got a choice. You can either saddle up or you can brush the horse when we're done. One of the two. You can feed it and clean it stable and everything else. I think that's a fantastic solution. Let me see what's going on here. Yeah, he is mainly on Patreon. What did I say? But yeah, he's on another channel where he has freedom of what he says. Same thing with Steve. Steve has a Patreon channel as well. And so he can be a little bit more free in what he says. We are kind of limited on what we can say on YouTube. Oh, you're quite welcome. Just fantastic books. And so what you'll find is I told everybody from the very first day when I picked the book, you're going to need tabs, you're going to need highlighters, and you're going to need a notepad when you read Steve's books, because there are some things down in there. I think there's some nuances in there that are so well scripted in there that you got to pay attention to what you're doing so that you can pick those up and say, how does this really reflect what we're doing in today's society? And hello, my prepper journey. So now, after we talk about those kind of people, so the discussion now is what really built America. Because remember, now we've got this new Kansas, we've got the sheriffs, Free Love, and the others who are kind of trying to come together. They don't want to be incorporated into a new state. They like the idea of republicanism. They like the idea of having separate entities that can come together for a mutual defense. And so this is where we have a discussion in the book about what really built America. And it was families, and it was the family structure. So that's why family, in my opinion, is being the highest form of the community member that we talked about just now. You had the family, then you have the committed or the friends, then you have the contributors or the guests, and then you have the complainers, or what does Steve call them? He calls them outsiders. So, so I see this as being a reconstruction of colonial America, and the same concepts, that if you remember the 13-piece rattlesnake, united we stand. And that's kind of the same thing. You've got 13 separate pieces. You got all these pieces here, the different counties in southeastern or east central Kansas that are unifying, but they don't want to be subject to each other, and they don't want to be subject to a central authority. But, let's take a look at what's going on, because remember, Coates at the end of book 4 left his army. He deserted them as they were being wiped out. And so here, we've got he's entertaining a young lady in his room, and one of the captains does something disrespectful, and he just plows him in the head with a pistol. And he kills the young lady and kind of sneaks out. So this is the second time at the end of a book that Coates has deserted those whose position of authority he has usurped or taken over by force and intimidation. So he gets what he wants, and he was the general in charge of the army, and then now he's kind of a de facto governor, and now he's kind of exiting again. So, I told last time I told you I forgot his name. I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this works out as far as the guy who deserted, the leader who deserted, and he does it again. Doggone. 2 data points does not a trend make, but it bears watching. What's going to happen to him in the next book? So now we come to that threat that's coming down from the north. It's kind of like a Muslim horde. And so they've been taking Christians and killing Christians and putting them on stakes, kind of the same things that happened back during the armed conversion of southeastern and south central and southwestern Europe, as well as North Africa, and moving on over into the east a little bit. Matter of fact, one of my favorite stories is King John V, what was it, Sobiesko of Poland, went down and relieved Vienna. Vienna was being attacked, and he went down and he had 200 winged hussars. And so with the money that his people gave him, he built angels' wings for them, and they attacked the Muslims coming out of the rising sun, so that it looked like 200 angels were coming down out of the hill, and he routed the Muslims, and it was unbelievable. But so the question here is, why does Patrick remove the genitalia of these slavers, the people who are taking the Christians and turning them into slaves? My Prepper Journey, I'll have links. There are links for you here when we get done with the thing. I also put in another link. If you want an autographed copy, go to Integrative Preparedness channel. That's Stephen's channel. And it has the instructions there on any of his videos on how you can get an autographed copy. He'll autograph all 5 books for you if you want them. You can either get them quickly through Amazon. I have a link tomorrow when this is made public, or you can wait. It usually takes about a week or 2 after you make an agreement with Stephen, and he'll get you the book autographed and to you, and personalized as well. So just let him know what you want there. Oh, wow. LG already said that. Look at her. She's ahead of me. Wow. I should have just read your response, LG. Thank you so much. You're so great. Which book? This book, The Blessings of Freedom? I think it was just written here very recently. Oh, one of the things that's really funny, I ordered all 5 books at the same time, and I did not inspect them. And so really strange. The first 4 were fantastic. Then I got to book 5, and it was past the return time. But look where it starts. There's no introduction, no copyright information, no nothing. First 14 pages are totally gone. So if I missed something in the first 14 pages, people, please let me know. There might have been something important in there. Well, yeah, I agree. It shows he does not have good, healthy moral roots, and you're absolutely right. Okay, let me get back here. So why does Patrick remove the genitalia? Well, there are some very important things that happen in the Muslim religion. So number 1 is the way your body is just before you die is how your body will be when it arrives in heaven. So the whole thing about the Muslim faith is that when you die, the men are going to go to heaven, and there will be 76 virgins waiting for them. Well, if you cut off the genitalia before they die, then they're going to go to heaven, and they're going to have all these virgins that they can't do anything with because their body is going to be in the same condition it was before they died. So that kind of is very... demoralizing, I guess, is the least I can say as far as how to die for a Muslim. The second thing that happens here is that the body parts, as well as the bodies, are fed to pigs who haven't eaten anything in a while. Now, remember, pigs will eat anything and everything that's given to them. So that's the second part of this portion of understanding the religion, and that is that the dirtiest thing on earth to a Muslim is pork or a pig. So having any kind of relationship with them or anything else, and especially being eaten by a pig, that would be, you're never going to go to heaven. You're never going to see what you're supposed to see at the end of your life. Now, a very, very wise thing is done here, okay? So why did he do that to all of the slavers except for 2 of them? And I'll even say, why not just 1? Why 2? And let's see what you all have to say about that. Oh, okay. Thank you, Steve. So why did he let 2 go? Nothing done to them. All they had to do was watch the others. And so the reason is to spread terror. The whole reason you do things like this is because you want to be so forceful, so intimidating, so daunting that nobody will ever even think about coming into your area or doing anything to you. And if you attack them through their religion, you've got them, because that's the basic moral precept that they live by. So you let 2 of them survive so they can go back and share the horror of what happened to the other guys back to their own people. Now, why do you do it with 2 instead of just 1? Because while one is giving his story to the powers that be, the other one is starting to tell the others around him. And then they come in. So now you've got one is telling the population while one is telling the leaders. Then they switch places. And it confirms, one confirms what the other one saw. And if you had one, you think it's just a dream or a nightmare or something. But where 2 witnesses are, yeah, absolutely, LG. It's far more reliable as far as 2 witnesses. That's what's required for murder at conviction is basically 2 witnesses. Okay, so let's go down here. Okay, so here's my kind of observation of the series so far, because that's kind of where it ends. And now, so what we see coming up next is we're going to have the cartels coming in from Texas, New Mexico area from the Southwest. We probably don't have any major threats coming from the Southeast. That's going to be an area probably of solidarity, of where there's going to be a little bit more exchange, agreement, sharing, and things like that going on. The Northeast and the North is where we're going to have that Muslim horde coming down. So now we have to form this government, and we're putting we're putting Bill Garner in as the governor against his will. But let me tell you something. If you read the Federalist Papers, the one thing that they agreed upon was the best kind of leader is the one who doesn't want to serve, because he has no ambitions of getting anything out of it. He just wants to do it for the pure wisdom or for the pure service to the community he's serving. So, kind of that Federalist Paper idea of putting Bill Garner in charge as the governor is just fantastic. So that shows really good insight there. And these other guys are going to kind of be subordinate to him in a defensive role. I think it's going to be primarily a defensive role. So now we've got this Muslim horde coming down from the Northeast and probably from the North. We've got the cartels coming from the Southwest. We've got a little bit of stability to the East and Southeast. It's going to be very interesting how this comes out as we go for it. Now, let's take a look at the first 4.5 books. For the first 4.5 books, anybody who wanted admission into the Stonemont, and let's call it protectorate, because remember, there's 3 large communities and a couple of sub-communities that are part of the Stonemont system. And so anybody who wanted to come in was readily accepted. I'm only aware of 2 people who were kicked out. And, and then they went down and got drunk at the bar and ended up stabbing the son of the head of the Vikings. And that's how the Vikings came up and became friends with the This is a different Vikings. This is the Vikings Motorcycle Club, not the Vikings that are down in northern Arkansas. But so those are the only two that I can think of so far that have been kicked out of the community. Although I think the two professors are on their way to being kicked out. So it's been a very receptive community. I think that because of all the threats that are around them, they're going to have to be a little bit more discerning in who they accept into the community and how they allow them to come in and what they're going to have to offer. And so with this new citizenship, that's also going to cause, remember that we've already got the beginnings of rumblings of some sort of a, I don't want to call it a revolution, but we've got, civil discord, let's call it that, that's being fomented. And so I see that there's going to be some internal strife. There's some external concerns coming from two different directions, opposite attractions or opposite directions coming towards Stonemont. There are some challenges coming up in the very near future. So how this all works out as far as accepting people into Stonemont and rejecting people out of Stonemont, I think that's going to be another one of those critical things that's going to be discussed in the next set of books that come out. So that's kind of where I am so far. What are your thoughts, or do you have any questions, or is there anything you think that I left out that you want to discuss? The only thing I will tell you that I am very, very impressed. We see an awful lot of fantastic preparedness um, information. I tell people when you start reading the books, get a notepad, get a highlighter, get pins to underline. If you take a look, you'll see. I highlight sentences and I highlight paragraphs, and I mean, I this is a great preparedness manual. We've talked about building hydroelectric facilities. We've talked about inventory of goods, what goods to look for, the prioritization of how to acquire goods, how to build homes out of mud so that they retain heat in the winter, and so how they can be easily cooled in the summer. And we've got all these fantastic things that are going on in the book with I mean, you can basically do everything preparedness. There's only two things so far that I'm aware of that I would like to see discussed a little bit more. And both of those have to do with hygiene or sanitation. So one of them has been, so far we haven't talked about anything about how we dispose of refuse. And I think that's going to be a critical thing. It's going to be a disease preventer if we have good refuse control. And I think that Stonemont and the other two communities are coming up large enough where we're going to have a discussion about refuse collection and disposal. And then the other portion of that is sewage. And we haven't had any really good discussion on that so far about the sewage, but I think we have an engineer in the family who is capable of coming up with those fantastic solutions. So that's where I am with this. Let me see what LG said. That's something that's really, really admirable, I believe, LG. And that's something as a result of reading the books. What I have done is one of the things that I felt was short in my preparations was I didn't have what I needed in case this happens next month or next week. I did not have the books and the tools I needed to educate my three grandchildren. So I've been going to Walmart and to Sam's Club, and my wife and I have both been talking about it. We'll probably go to a couple other places, trying to get curriculum, trying to get these preparation books, math, reading, and everything else. And she was inventorying our early education reading books earlier today. And so one of the things that the books pointed out for me, an area where I had a shortage, was, can I educate my grandchildren if it gets to the point of where we don't have an educational system available to provide the education that they are providing now. I'm almost of the opinion they would be better off with homeschool than public school anyway. I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's far, far better than James Wesley Rawls's series. I will tell you that the James Forsyth, I think his name is, who wrote the 1 Second After series. I got some great stuff out of that series as well. The one thing I got out of it was my total, because we have a type 1 brittle diabetic in the family. And the picture of somebody dying of not having insulin and dying of diabetes mellitus just convinced me. And so I spent thousands of dollars. I've got whole house solar now with battery backup. I've got an extra solar system for the backyard. I've got a 5 kW generator. I've got a solar operated refrigerator freezer so I can get all that stuff into it. I've made a contact with a local pharmacist so that we can get the proper insulin and needles and everything else should SHTF. So, that made me totally aware that I was medically unprepared to take care of the person I love most should something happen. So the one good thing, if you can get the books, and I guarantee you're going to get more than one, but if you can only get one good thing that will cause you to change your preparedness and how you are preparing for what's going to inevitably happen out of these books, then it is well worth it, in my opinion. So I am just disheartened that we're running out of books and that this is the last book. And hopefully we'll have volume 6 out here in the near future. I guarantee you, as soon as volume 6 comes out, we will interrupt any other series that we are in so that we can return back to the Stonemont series. Any other comments or ideas that we have here, or suggestions or questions or anything else? Tell me, do you think I'm full of bull, or do you think that that we've been pretty spot on here? What are all of you readers' thoughts about these books? Okay, so Jim Wyatt says to do it. Bill Garner says to do it. Stephen Smith says to do it. Get this book and read it. I will do a book review on this in the very near future. I want to also strongly recommend that you do a little bit of great studying around the colonization of the United States. Talk about, up until the Revolution, the things that went on there. Study a little bit the Federalist Papers and what the Constitution was intended to do. And, a lot of that stuff that's going to become very important, because regardless of what happens here in the very near future, we're going to have to rebuild. We need brilliant people who are well-read, who have a good, solid theological, philosophical, moral foundation to be the leaders and rebuild this country after whatever happens. And so I would strongly encourage you to get the finest books and do the finest reading and see what we can do for the future. Scott, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. LG, thank you. One of my favorites as well. There's so much in there. Yes, we could reread them several times and get it. Well, listen, y'all, thank you so much for being such a great part of this. And remember, we're going to do this book next. We're going to do it on December 1st. And so that's going to be another series. This is set in central to northern Florida. And so it's a little bit different. There are some good agricultural ideas in the books. Unfortunately, I'm in Texas, and what happens in Florida agriculturally does not happen in Texas. So, a little bit different. Kay, thank you for your comment. But listen, what I would like to do is finish this with numbers. And if you would please remember, if you need the books, you can order them on Amazon. I have the links below. If you want them autographed, please go to Integrative Preparedness. And I think LG or Prepping by Faith or somebody has put that link up there. Let's put that link up there again for Integrative Preparedness. You can go there and order your books and have them autographed by Steve. And I'm sure he'll be happy to do that for you. So numbers, let me see right there. So as we end the night, thank you all so much for being here and participating. I really love you all, and thank you so much. So Numbers chapter 6, verses 23 through 26. This is how you shall bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look kindly upon you and give you peace. So remember, we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. Be kind, polite, and respectful to each other because, as we've seen in these 5 books, togetherness is the key. Take care. Bye-bye.